It's time for the watch list.
Here comes two.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the watch list where we're going to be covering everything that I watched, movies, documentaries, films, all that good stuff here throughout the year of 2022 and then probably beyond. I'm your host, Mr. Eric Jenkins, and thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. We are covering everything that we watched in March of 2020, and we're going to skip documentaries this month because I didn't watch any. And we're going to save the TV shows for the end because I've only watched one, and it's kind of a controversial topic for the fans of this particular IP. And I kind of have, a hot take on it. But let's get into the films that I watched. So this time around, I went So this time around, I actually went to the movies twice. It's been a long time since I actually went to the movies, and it was wonderful to go back into the cinema. So I am very happy to have been able to sit in a nice chair and watch both of these films in glorious high definition and with a nice audience. Well, the second one only had like 4 or 5 people in it, which really, really upsets me because this film is
freaking sick.
But we're just getting to the first film, which is The Batman. A welcomely well-deserved return to the detective comics. We have Robert Pattinson, a nice, mature, not Team Twilight actor. He was Cedric Diggory. Baby. Gotta remember that. Robert Pattinson plays a very young, very amateur-like Batman. Doesn't have the big wealth. Well, he's got the wealth, but he doesn't have the technology that the Nolan Batman had, which is great. It's very grassroots. And we have him going after the Riddler. And the Riddler is, I'm not going to spoil, this is going to be a spoiler-free kind of little talk about this film. The Riddler is played by a wonderful actor that I have respected the hell out of. Probably plays one of the best roles in one of my favorite, indie comedies. And I love the way that he portrayed the Riddler in this film. It's very dark. It's very long. It's very sludgy. It's very... It's a detective film. It's not an action film per se. It's not a drama, but it adds the two together and it brings back... It's almost like a neo-noir in a sense, which is wonderful because Detective Comics, DC is Detective Comics. So let's be real. We're actually bringing back the detective work in this film. You actually see him trying to figure out the Riddler's puzzles. Versus Nolan looks at something and he goes, oh yeah, it's the Joker, he's over there. And they go. Now, the Nolan Batman trilogy, S tier, 100%. Dark Knight, chef's kiss. Heath Ledger, R.I.P. my guy. Bane, you're so great as the Batman. Love it. I love those films. However, this is a nice breath of fresh air. Even though it is lengthy as hell, I definitely recommend you go see this movie. It's got enough action in it to keep you entertained. It's got a lot of really great plot. There's a lot of meat on the bone left for future films, which they are planning on doing. And once you've seen the film, please go and check out the deleted scene. I'm not going to really talk about it, but there's a deleted scene with another character. So go check that out later on. But this is a highly recommend. Go see it in theaters while it's still in theaters. Or if you're not looking to get into the crowds, if you've got a nice little setup to watch films on, this is a good one to have with the the bass. Oh, there's a lot of echoey bass. Oh, the sound is beautiful. So definitely check this out if you can in high definition and with some great sound. All right, next up we have a film that I am in love with. And I think this deserves a lot more eyes on it than what I've seen people talk about it. It is Ty West's newest film, X. I don't even know how to explain this film. It's an homage to early sexploitation, early splatter, early gore, early slasher with an A24 little sprinkling on there and a little Ty West zip zap zoop all on the platter, and it is a wonderfully gory, sexy mess. It takes place in the 1970s. A group of dancers and exotic women go into the, wilderness, go into the countryside and rent a farm from this very, very liberal couple. And during this time, you can actually hear this repeating, sermon going on, and it cuts to it. It's very jarring, but it's interesting, and you're going to find out later if you watch the movie why. But you have the main character who's played by Mia Goth, who also plays the wife, who's this very old, kind of like bad grandpa looking, like it looks like Spike Jonze from Jackass wearing the old lady suit. But she mentions to Mia Goth's character she looks just like her, and it kind of creeps her out, and the husband's like, stay away from my wife, she's not well. But what are their intents? They're trying to make the first home pornography film. The farmer's daughter motif. Ooh, my dad is not home, he'll be home soon. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So they try to remake, or they try and make this their first attempt. And there's a lot of nudity, a lot of flesh, a lot of this. And it's just a romp. It's a romp of a film. Meanwhile, then you see this old lady, and you're like, wow, she's really creepy. I wonder what's going to happen. And she kind of just like shows up, and she's just like looking at them very creepily. It's very voyeuristic, and you're like, oh my god, like what the hell? And then you're like, she's got to be like some sort of killer. And spoiler alert, she is. Like, it's the old slasher motif. It's the old lady's going to be the killer. And it is a gory mess. Like, the kills in this film are wonderful. It was a very, very interesting film, and I'm loving what Ty West has done. And he's also already produced a prequel, because they had Pearl, who's the old lady, played by Mia Goth, do another film set in the 1918, where we see why she's this killing old granny. It's wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful. I highly recommend seeing it. Don't see it if you're squeamish, and don't see it if you're kind of, sensitive to like sex and stuff like that. Don't see it with the little ones, kind of thing. Make sure it's like Comedy Central After Dark kind of thing. But highly recommend it. Probably my favorite film that I've seen this year in theaters, and probably so far. It is my top dog spot. Speaking of top dog spots, we are going to our next film, which is Night of the Living Bread. And yes, I said bread, not dead. Night of the Living Bread was a short film where they replaced the zombies from Night of the Living Dead with bread. And it's literally just somebody behind a camera hucking Wonder Bread slices at people and at doors and stuff like that. It is cheesy, it is awful, but it is wonderful at the same time. I just came across it because I've actually been collecting Night of the Living Dead stuff, and there was a VHS combo pack that I saw on eBay, and I wanted to make sure I saw this correctly because it was like 2 in the morning, and I was like, am I dreaming about this? It was 2 VHS tapes, so you open the clamshell up, and then you got Night of the Living Dead on one side, and then there's a small tape, like not a lot of film in the tape, of a film called Night of the Living Bread. I Google it, find out it's real, find a YouTube link. It's awful, but it's so bad it's good kind of thing. It's definitely MST3K. Yeah, MST3K worthy of riffing on top of. But going into the actual zombie flicks, we have the next film in the Of the Dead series. We have Dawn of the Dead, 1979's Dawn of the Dead. A wonderful, wonderful piece about consumption in American culture. One of my favorite films of all time. Shows a group of people, 2 Marines, or like SWAT members, and a helicopter pilot, and a news reporter. stealing a helicopter while the zombie apocalypse is happening, and flying the whirly bird up, and they come across a mall. And the cool thing is, and this is, I actually recorded this twice, and I had this like epiphany. They actually explain what a shopping mall is in the film. They're like, it's one of those big shopping districts. I think that's called a mall. And this is kind of like the birth of mall culture. There weren't a lot of shopping malls around, and then in the mid 80s, we had this big boom of shopping malls. And now in 2022, we're actually at like the death of malls. Like the time that a mall has been around, like its half-life has been kind of expired. And it's interesting because like the movie theater that I go to is in a town with a dead mall. Like literally the flagship stores are Target and the movie theater. Which it used to be a bustling mall. And it's kind of interesting that like you have this, what is full of dead zombies, people trying to wanting to consume the flesh of the living, but then in reality it's the mall, people trying to consume goods. And then now you go to something that's dead and it's like eerie, but like wouldn't the one with zombies be eerie? I don't know. It was very interesting, but they're fun. After they clear the mall out, their fun gets kind of held up when one of the people get bit, and they have to take him out when he turns. And then a group of bikers, led by Tom Savini, actually, who does the makeup and special effects for this film, which are, Tom Savini, love you, man. They ruin the fun of everybody else, and they have to escape. But it is a wonderful, wonderful zombie film. If you haven't seen it yet, highly recommend it. And also, the 2004 one is very good as well. I definitely would recommend that one as well. Most people would say, the remakes aren't that good. The 2004 one's pretty good too. Next up, we have Zombie Flesh Eaters. There's actually a band called Fulci, which uses sound effects from Fulci films into their thing, and they have a zombie-themed one. So Zombie Flesh Eaters, or Zombie, was supposed to be Night of the Living Dead 2, created by Lucio Fulci, the godfather of gore. But this is more of a tribalistic, voodoo-esque zombie. We actually have a reason why there's zombies happening, which is one of the reasons like I love the Romero films. It's such a mystery why the dead are walking. This one, it's half voodoo, half medicine, so it's like a combination of the two. We have a young lady whose father's boat just appears in New York with a zombie on it, and they are trying to figure out what happened to the father, and so they go off into the jungle, and there they find like some cannibalistic people that they think it's voodoo, and they also think it's the scientist that's also working. But this is like then it happens in this area, and they all kind of congregate, and they take over areas, and they start to push into the cities. Very, very gory film. Very basic story premise, but very gory. It has probably one of the most iconic scenes that Lucio Fulci is known for. And if you don't like splatter films, don't check this out. But if you love a bucket of blood, definitely check this. Not the movie Bucket of Blood, but if you love buckets upon buckets of blood, definitely give this a watch. Not as good as Dawn of the Dead in my personal opinion. I'd watch that first. I'd watch probably Night, Dawn, and Day before going into this one. But this one's a fun film to just kind of have on. The kills are pretty interesting. Like I said, the blood effects are there. It's a Fulci film. That's what the guy's known for. Speaking of blood and gore, we have Clooney Brown. Clooney Brown, baddest woman in the whole damn town. Clooney Brown, a screwball comedy that came out in the late 40s about a young lass who gets in trouble for fixing someone's pipes. You would think that this is X2 or the prequel to X, but it's not. Clooney Brown is a young apprentice to her uncle, who is a plumber. Her uncle can't make it to the party to do a job, So Clooney Brown goes and, without her permission, or without his permission, and goes and fixes the pipes, and there's a young writer there that is like, oh, I like this Clooney Brown girl. But never sees her for the rest of the party because she's taken away by her uncle, and her uncle's like, you're moving back to the country and you're going to be a maid because I have authority over you and you can't do a man's job. Which is very, and nowadays it's a very sexist thing, but unfortunately that's how it was back in the 1940s. This is set into World War II time. Meanwhile, the place where she's working, the young writer comes back to visit this group of people, and he now has to tiptoe between loving Clooney Brown and a servant versus walking the high life with the upper class. And he tries to win her over, but she's fallen in love with the pharmacist. So it's a traditional screwball comedy. You have a love triangle starting to form. Triangle. Not the best screwball comedy, but I did love the cover art, so I was, kind of hooked there. Definitely worth the watch if you've seen some of the bigger titles, one of which I'm going to talk about next, but not my favorite. Not my favorite film that I watched this time around, but it's worth a watch if you're bored one day. A film that you should definitely check out, one of the big dogs and big cats of screwball comedy, is His Girl Friday, where we have Hildy, fresh off of her divorce from Cary Grant's character, who also works at the same place as her, resigns and says, I don't want to work here anymore. Let's do this correctly. Listen here, Jack, I don't want to work here anymore. Well, we've got one big story, Hildy. I know we used to be married, and I know you're divorcing me, and you're marrying that guy over there, but this is what you gotta do. There's a man downstairs, he's killed a cop, you gotta interview him. This could be your last big story. Oh, you might be right. I am addicted to work and the papers. Maybe we should go do this. Yeah, and while we're doing that, maybe I'll go and try and get your husband arrested. What was that? No, nothing. It's okay. Trust me, I'm not trying to get your husband arrested and trying to win you over. Oh, that's what I thought. I'm gonna go try and interview this guy, and hopefully nothing crazy happens where we put him in a desk. And that's His Girl Friday, in a nutshell. Very, very awesome screwball comedy. Hopefully, I don't really want to even go over that. Just watch His Girl Friday. Top S-tier screwball comedy. Top S-tier comedy. Probably, I think it's in the top 100 AFI list. It should be. I'm going to post Eric. Go do that research because I didn't do that yet. But yeah, very, very awesome film. Definitely check it out. Especially if you're new to early cinema, early comedy, this is one that you have to watch. All right. Lastly, we have a few more films before we get. I didn't realize I watched this many films. We have 2 Chaplin joints, and then we have another screwball comedy. We're gonna get into the screwball comedy. Some Like It Hot, the #1 voted comedy of all time. I did my research there. Some Like It Hot is a Marilyn Monroe joint. The only Marilyn Monroe joint shot in black and white. There's your IMDb trivia fact right there. Where she plays Sugar Cane. She plays the ukulele, and she's the singer of a all-female band. But that's not the whole concept there. We have Joe and Jerry. I look at my notes. Joe and Jerry are 2 males. I'm going to preface that. They're males that witnessed the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and are trying to get work because they were playing in a speakeasy. Unfortunately, they're then spotted by Spats Magumbo. Columbo? Spats Columbo. I think it should have been Magumbo. Spats Columbo, the mob boss, and they want him dead because they witnessed 2 killings. So they take the only gig that, it was a joke, but they take the only gig that they can, and they buy wigs and females' clothing, and they dress up as women, and they go on the train, and they become women in a all-women band. So it's very Mrs. Doubtfire-like, because now we have Joe's character, or Josephine, is trying to win over Marilyn Monroe's character, Sugar Cane. So he dresses up as a millionaire. So that is very Mrs. Doubtfire-like. And then you've also got Daphne's character, who is being followed around by a rich millionaire as well. So it's a lot of wackiness happening, and then to throw a wrench into this beautiful pie, we have the mafia birthday extravaganza in Florida, the same hotel that they play at, with Spats Colombo being the head of that committee. So now it's like, oh crap, now they have to definitely run. Watch this and His Girl Friday, that's all I gotta say. Watch this and His Girl Friday. Next up, we have one of my favorite films and probably one of the best comedies from Charlie Chaplin is Modern Times. Modern Times is a critique on the working class. There's a whole bunch of commentary here. The working class, the Great Depression, living in jail, and the revolving door system that is the American jail system, and the comfortability that people have living in jail, as well as in the actual movie industry with synchronized sound. The Jazz Singer came out 7 years prior to this film being released, and there's only 2 or 3 instances of synchronized sound, one of them being the big boss shows up on the TV screen. And then you have the Nonsense song, which is Chaplin's, basically the tramp sings a song, but it's just gibberish. And it shows that it's his commentary saying that you don't need dialogue to run a story, which is what a lot of people were saying in the 1930s because they have the use of synchronized sound. But you have the tramp that gets taken off of his job because he kind of like loses his brain. He starts like doing all these crazy things at work, and then you have the famous scene where he goes through the gears and stuff like that. But he ends up going to jail, and he ends up stopping a prison breakout. So he now lives this comfortable life, and he wants to stay in jail. Meanwhile, his wife, Paulette Goddard, not his wife in the actual film, but in real life, Paulette Goddard was his wife during this film, plays a young girl, mind you, which also talks about Chaplin's taste in women as well. I just realized that. With 2 younger sisters as well as a father. The father is gunned down during a Depression riot slash was supposed to be a civil dead air strike is the word. Lisa Simpson singing that song in my head came up, and she's now on the run because she doesn't want to stay in foster care, and she ends up trying to go to jail, but the tramp ends up taking the blame for something that she did. And they do a couple oddball things, like he ends up getting a job as a watchman at a department store, and he invites her to come along, and they do all these random things. It's a really great film, and it goes by like that. I really don't want to give the rest of it away because there's a lot of different like set piece chapters that go into this film. But it is a wonderful watch, and I highly recommend it, especially if you're new to Chaplin films. I'm gonna do a separate film like breakdown of Chaplin films and like how and like what order to watch them, because a lot of people start with some of the shorts and they're like, these are kind of boring, and then they'll jump into like a talkie and they're like, this is very strange. I'm like, no, you gotta do it this way. Like, this is how it's gotta get. This is the ground rule for it. Speaking of talkies, we have Limelight, which is a critique on Chaplin's life in its own way. We have Calvero, played by Charlie Chaplin, who is a drunk ex-vaudeville star who helps a woman get resuscitated, and she ends up not being able to walk after trying to kill herself. And he tells her, it's like, you gotta try. It's all in your head. You're gonna do great. I'm washed up, but I'm gonna help you out. She ends up finding a way to walk, and she thanks Calvero. She loves him so much for helping her out, but it's the friendship and the dedication that she loves, but not love itself. Calvero notices that she loves this one gentleman that she mentioned earlier in the film that was a composer, and they actually end up meeting for the first time face to face after Terry, the dancer, gets fired. And he goes, I see the way you look at him. You don't love me, and I don't mind. I love liquor. I'm old. I have my ways. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm an old man. You should be loving a young person and loving forever. I'm going to die soon. So what does he do? After doing this awesome routine with Buster Keaton, which you should just Google that, that's wonderful, he ends up quitting show business and working as a street performer with his vaudevillian friends. So that way he can give Terry the love that she deserves by going with the man that she claimed to be in love with earlier in the film. A very longer film, but it's great in its own right. Not as good as Modern Times, but it's still a wonderful watch, and the dialogue in it is excellent. Chaplin plays a wonderful character of an ex-vaudeville star, which is most likely about him, because this is the last film he shot in America. This was like 1956, I believe. So last film he shot, and then I think he retired. Very, very awesome film. Recommend it if you're into comedies, but I would watch Modern Times before this film. And lastly, we are going to get into TV shows where I've been starting to watch the newest series on Paramount Plus, which is the Halo series. Why is this a controversial topic? Because a lot of people in the Halo community are very meh about this franchise. It's heavily CGI oriented. There's a lot of characters that are in it that aren't portrayed like they are in the video games. Master Chief takes his helmet off within the first 20 minutes, which is something that we haven't even gotten as video game players for almost 2 decades of playing the games. And we have an identity of who John 117 is within the first episode. However, I will say the effects in this film or TV series in the first episode are wonderful. There's a first fight scene where a group of humans get encountered by the Covenant, and it's just a big bloodbath, and the Covenant's taking over, and then USNC Spartans drop in, and they start dropping dudes. Boom, 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 boom. And it is wonderful. I love that scene. I watched it numerous times. There are a couple things that you notice. Some of the CGI is kind of cheesy. Some of the effects are cheesy, but I went into this without having high expectations. That's one thing you have to do with like television nowadays. Don't have high expectations. If a film or a television show has the high production value and is wonderful, then your expectations, you're like, oh, this is freaking dope. You're going to love it even more. If you go in up here and it's down here, you're like, ah, man, that sucks. If you go in up here and it's down here, you're like pissed. But if you go in here and it's here, you're like, ah, okay, whatever. If you go in here and it's here, you're like, okay, cool, whatever. Here to here, through the freaking roof. Master Chief has found something that the Covenant are after. I don't want to give away anything. So the Covenant are after him, and he goes AWOL with a young, the one survivor of that attack. And he's got he and this young girl have a bounty over their head. And that's basically where we are so far during the filming of this episode of the Watchlist, because it just started last week. They just aired the episode yesterday, but I haven't gotten to watching it yet. So I do look forward to watching it soon. But I think it's decent. If I were to give it a numeric score, I would give it like a 6.5 out of 10. It's nothing I'm gonna like really highly recommend. If you've seen the Halo series, I would give it a whirl because you're more familiar with some of the things. But if you go into it just knowing that it's a regular like space sci-fi show, it's very mundane. It doesn't really have anything that's like really kind of giving it the meat. But the Halo name and the Halo lore behind it kind of back it up a little bit more. And that's going to do it for this episode of The Watchlist. Thank you guys so much for checking this video out, and thank you for sticking around for the whole thing. I really do appreciate it. I know it's kind of been a longer video, and I've got notes next to me over here. My computer's over here. Like I said, and actually, no, I didn't say it. My streaming setup is kind of under construction right now, so I don't have the microphone that I normally use for these. I have my secondary computer over here with notes, and I'm just using the regular camera here. But thank you guys so much for checking this out. And thank you for all the love and support you've given me during this time. I really do appreciate it. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys are watching down below, and if you've seen any of these, let me know in the comments what you guys think of it. And I'll see you guys next month, and I'll also see you guys in the next one. Peace out.